like this is mandatory because of the brown. I mean,
And yet, you have on it before. So you can. We are live.
All right, fantastic. Okay, well, welcome to the January 18th MAC meeting. Thank you for coming, our big crowd.
Yes.
And for all folks who are on the call as well. So, I guess we shall go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So, we have a little flag.
We have a flag ready for you.
Oh, okay. All right. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. All right, I guess we shall do a roll call. Which we have a forum here.
Yes. Brian Leubitz,
Here.
Jill Levitt. Here. Caroline Madden.
Here.
Scott Foster.
Here.
Beth Brazzoni.
Here.
And Ginny, did you want to attend as not a member of the voting tonight? Voting panel? Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Just trying to turn it off.
And I'm having, there's an issue with the sound that. I'm just concerned because I didn't really hear Ginny very well, but let's go on, they can hear us.
Yeah,
Okay,
Jeannie has had in the past issues with her sound.
Okay.
So.
okay.
Okay, so, I think we finished the roll call.
Yes,
Okay, so, for the agenda, everybody has seen this agenda online and then, I guess, in front of them. Is there a motion to approve this agenda?
I moved
All
to
right,
approve the agenda.
okay, okay, Caroline seconds, thank you. I think we can just do all in favor of approving the agenda? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Okay, I think we are unanimous. Okay, the consent agenda, which is basically just the minutes from our last November meeting.
and I think we might have to put the approval of that off to a future meeting because there isn't a quorum of people here who were at that meeting,
Correct.
unfortunately.
Yes, okay, so we will delay our November 14 minutes, so we will have to make sure we get. That will be an item to consider. Okay, so, I don't think this was relevant here, but, are there any conflicts of interest? in the council? Seeing none, I shall move on. Does anybody have any comments about matters not listed on the agenda from, first, the members of this body? Anybody? Well,
Do we have any comments to say that have nothing to do with the agenda items?
yeah, okay, so I will add, which is not on the agenda. That here in Bodega Bay, we have our crab season open today. So yes, very excited. So I will point out for future people who watch this, because there's gonna be lots of people who watch this. That we'll get some fresh local crab and support our local fishermen.
Support the local fishermen, definitely.
Okay. So I guess we're gonna have to skip Supervisor Hopkins.
I do have a couple of other little things.
Wow, that is some fantastic timing.
I have a couple of little things. I'm getting calls about pampas grass. Had two constituents call, asking us, to, help do something about all the pampas grass along the roadways and on private property. Parks already, they discussed this last meeting, the parks already are talking about doing something about pampas grass. But I don't know what it is we would do, but just to put it out there, I've gotten 2 calls about pampas grass.
Pampas grass. I do not like pampas grass. I've spent many hours
Yes.
trying to dig that stuff up. It is evil.
Yes.
Okay, seeing that, I will, I'm gonna go ahead and, are you ready, Supervisor Hopkins?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going to start with an update. I was just on the phone with Jeff Duvall, and so I can update both about the 911 connectivity issue in the North Coast, as well as just kind of like weather forecast in short and long term. So we have 2 911 failures on the North Coast. One is like rooted in Pasadero and one is rooted in Timber Cove. And you probably know more than I do. One of them, 3 people can call 911 at the same time, but if a 4th person calls, it's a busy signal. And the other one is just a busy signal. And so the Department of Emergency Management has been taking this like the threat to public safety that it is, especially with the large storm expected over the weekend. And Jeff is endlessly frustrated with the telecom companies who are not responsive. And so technically they're supposed to sort of check this like card that is in this box once a month. But it honestly doesn't seem like they're doing that, because if they were, they would have caught it. Either they would have caught it at the end of December or in the first half of January. And that's how long it's been out, and they did not actually catch it themselves. Also, it should be set up so that when it fails, it actually sort of sets off an alarm, both the sheriff's office and also with Redcom, right? Like that is kind of the system that is in place and should be sort of a safety net. That obviously did not happen, and I think he was talking to Frontier, and he basically asked like, well, why aren't you monitoring, you know, this sort of more effectively? And I said, well, the state doesn't pay us to monitor this. So Jeff, in addition to kind of fighting this battle locally, we are also coordinating on reaching out to McGuire's office to try to address this more holistically, because it's been, I think, at least a half a dozen times since I've been in office, and I think 3 or 4 times since Jeff has had the job, that this happens and that it's out for far too long. So the update on the time of restoration is that they don't apparently even have easy access to these cars that they need to replace. So they are both ordering it and trying to find one in their central office, and whichever is faster, they will use to replace these cards. But it's kind of a mind-numbing level of sort of incompetence in the private sector. So just being one there, that's very frustrating. Next up, we've got a very substantial AR that is forecast as a weak AR1 rolling in late this week, over the weekend, and early next week. The Russian River is not expected to hit flood stage. Unfortunately, there is not a strong AR stacking up at this point in time behind the current atmospheric river. There may be sort of a weak storm that comes in. We are expecting, for what it's worth, Mark West Creek to sort of hit flood stage, but again, the river will stay well within its banks at like 25 feet. And when it's really worrisome, of course, when we get those, you know, multiple storms in a row. We then look to have a little bit of a break for like a week. And preliminary long-range forecasting for February is looking more active, so we will keep you updated as soon as we have more information on that. Still, even though, you know, we're not expecting major flooding, you know, wind, down trees, sort of all of the usual localized flooding impacts are anticipated. I was in coordination with both Johannes, making sure that, you know, we've got road crews ready to be deployed at all hours of the night, and coordinating closely with our fire district partners, you know, as well as Department of Emergency Management to monitor that. So, so that's kind of the update from Department of Emergency Management. I also want to share an update about Permit Sonoma and the local coastal plan. Oh, yeah.
Mind if I interject? Have you heard from PG&E about if they're gonna be ready?
That's a good question. So unfortunately, we should reach out to our existing PG&E contact. Unfortunately, our prior PG&E contact, but PG&E worked with the county, and so now the guy that we have a contact for is like managing several counties. So we don't have as good of a direct line, but I'll check in with Jeff Duvall, because they obviously have sort of like an
Right.
EOC to EOC.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a thing, and so, I will do that as a follow-up.
Great, I mean, because my concern is after what happened last year, is that like, you could tell that there was no pre-planning. For, given the magnitude that what that last year was not, like, they knew several days ahead of time it was gonna be a really bad storm, and there was. You know, a lack of planning, there was no pre-stage resources. But I mean, doesn't look to be anywhere near like that storm, but it would be nice if, you know, sort of going forward, we could get them to do more in terms of pre-planning for those major events.
Yep, I totally agree on that, and actually, sort of following up on that concept in general. I wanted to let you know that, you know, we've been working on a replacement for the sheriff station and fire station in downtown Guerneville for a while now. And we also received sort of federal grant that we thought was maybe gonna go towards that, but actually the federal grant is going to be looking at sort of countywide, where is the most isolated place in need of a facility that could provide pre-staging, both for firefighters, PG&E, transportation, public works. And I will just say that the North Coast is likely to be highly competitive in that. So we kind of already have Guerneville moving forward, and this would potentially give us an opportunity. And Department of Management will be conducting a county-wide survey to kind of determine the most at-risk area, but preliminarily, I think that our odds are at least, you know, good to be in like the top tier candidates for that kind of a facility that would then, you know, be able to move forward with planning funding, which then makes you eligible for the actual implementation and construction funding. And I know that it's been an interest, you know, fire services having overnight accommodations in particular, so that we've got a place for folks to sleep and be, you know, deployed. That would help PG&E, it would help, you know, TPW, and it would help fire services and mutual aid partners. So.
Great, that's wonderful.
Any questions on the sort of weather or emergency stuff before I jump to the next one? All right, local coastal plan. So we got the local coastal plan kicked back from the Coastal Commission with a whole ton of comments and questions. And so Permit Sonoma is, you know, a little bit frustrated because we've been working very closely with the commission the whole time, and there are new staff at the commission, and so they're asking totally different questions and seem to have a different perspective than the staff previously. So we are now hoping that that will go, it's not gonna go to the commission early this year. We're hoping for like late spring, possibly summer, but it'll kind of depend on how many times it gets kicked back. Their Permit Sonoma is expecting to send sort of a, you know, draft with all of the answers to the questions, and I mean like minor modifications that are not major policy modifications that would have to go back to the board by the end of this month. So in the next couple, 3 weeks, yeah, it might go into early February. They'll be resubmitting the Coastal Commission, and then they'll hear, okay, does this get kicked back one more time, or can we actually get something scheduled? And they'll try to schedule it near us so we can attend.
Are you expecting there to be substantive changes, or is it gonna be?
I don't think that there should be, and you know, at some point when it's appropriate, I may give a call to the chair of the Coastal Commission, who lives about 10-15
Yeah.
minutes from here, and we know her well.
Yeah.
To say, you know, we've worked very closely with staff all the way through, you know, in the best interest. We have what I believe is the most protective LCP ever, very, very strong language, you know, climate resilience, all the things they're looking for, so I don't understand what the holdup is. So, but government is what the holdup is, right? So, so that's kind of where we are at on that. And then I also wanted to sort of just like talk a little bit about a situation for our crab fishermen, which is quite frankly pretty dire. And I've been in close coordination with Dick Ogg over the last couple of weeks. It was looking like it could have been as much as a 50% reduction in what they were able to catch due to entanglements from, you know, equipment that sort of got away from fishermen. And he described it as a perfect storm because usually after crab season, there's a salmon season and you have tons of boats out there. And if they see a crab pot floating around, they are going to take that crab pot, right? And they're going to bring it back. And that didn't happen because we didn't have a salmon season. And so unfortunately, there were entanglements, not during the crab season, but with crab gear. And so, that has sort of, led the powers that be at the state level, to decrease sort of, the amount of gear that is allowed to actually, be deployed. And so in addition to being a late season, it's also going to be a light season. And this was really hoping to be sort of the savior of the fishermen because there was no salmon season. And so we've been brainstorming a number of ideas, with Dick Ogg, on how we can support the fishermen. We will be, I talked to Bert Whitaker, and the birthing fee waiver program that we implemented is completely exhausted of funds. And so we're gonna try to bring that back before the Board of Supervisors for an extension. We know that fishermen will sort of have some revenue for the next few months at least, but we know that it's gonna get them slim pickings when that runs out, which will run out, earlier because there's just not as much revenue coming in from the crab. So we're planning on reinstating that program. And then Shay can also touch base on some of the other things that he has been following up with EDB. We're also talking about, how can we sort of support economically in the longer term.
Yeah, so one of the other pieces that we've been looking at is vocational training or help in the off season for folks that need some extra income. Obviously looking at any kind of low income loans or grants that we can give to these folks to keep them afloat. And then a focus on talking to Richard Ogg about what fisheries are out there that we can focus on if folks want funding to retool. So we've been looking at sablefish, looking at hagfish as an example for fisheries that are still going strong that will not have issues with DFW. And if there are fisheries that are fishermen that want to retool, can we give them funding or can we get them low interest loans so that they can retool their boats and get back out there?
And maybe also work on rebranding, because hagfish doesn't sound quite as good.
The other name is slimy eel, so.
Right, that's what I'm saying, they're both bad, we
They're
gotta
both-
come up with a new name.
Well, we were talking about the idea of Chilean sea bass, which were like toothfish,
Yeah.
and they rebranded, and I'm like, come on. We have a wonderful opportunity here with our sablefish, black cod, it's a wonderful, delicious fish. Well, we're gonna be working with the tourism board.
There you go. Heard it here first, folks. I also wanted to give an update. It doesn't apply in the coastal zone, but for those of you who have a property or know folks who are just on the other side of the coastal zone, the tree protection and oak woodland ordinance is a really big deal. And on Tuesday, I was part of a tour where we brought together environmentalists and foresters and visited a number of sites to look at sort of well-managed forests and unmanaged forests, and to try to actually get to consensus on the tree protection ordinance that is going to be considered by the Board of Supervisors later this year. It was sort of punted from last year because quite frankly, I wasn't ready to vote on it because there were too many questions about the practical implementation. I support having a tree protection ordinance in principle, absolutely. But we were in a place where it wasn't clear if, hey, you have a tree that's leaning over your path that you're worried about because your kids go down that path twice a day to feed your goats. Could you cut it down, or could your neighbor call and then you're gonna get a $30,000 fine, right? And then there were also some other questions, like in the originally proposed tree protection ordinance, it said that you had to replace any tree that you cut with the same species and plant 6 of them. So if you were to cut down, and that's if it's over 6 inches in diameter at breast height. For instance, if you were to cut down a bay tree that was giving sudden oak death to all of your oaks on your property, you would have to replant 6 bays to replace that bay tree, which didn't make any sense from an ecological perspective. So we worked through that. We had some really good conversations. It was a little tense at times, but we got to a good place at the end where I felt like there was consensus around some practical implementation. And the goal is really to protect the forest largely, while also supporting and facilitating homeowners to do common sense, good forestry practices, like, thinning things so that you could get prescribed fire on the landscape, or, taking out invasives or those kinds of things. So my hope is that a much better ordinance will come forward that actually has the support of both forestry, experts as well as environmentalists. And I will say that it's worth it to take this time to get folks out in the field. We had a great tour on the North Coast, and that was really the model that we were following, was with the local coastal plan. We needed to get folks out there and figure out vegetation management and forestry. That worked, and I think that sometimes it just takes people getting out of like ugly county offices and going out in the beautiful woods and sitting around a table and talking to each other. So we did that. And then let's see, what else on this?
I have a question.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
does this tree protection ordinance apply to the forest as well as to the backyard trees?
Yes, it does. It applies to all trees. Well, at this point, it's sort of all trees with over 6 inches in diameter, but that actually was a subject of discussion. Is that actually appropriate? Are there maybe different sort of diameters for different trees that would be more appropriate, because that really sort of takes, like, if you have a young forest, but that's totally choked out, that's basically like thicket, you could actually have a lot of trees that are 6-7 inches. That's actually not that big, so that was a conversation. And then we also-
For not the coastal zone, we have a different
Does
ordinance.
not apply to coastal zone, and unfortunately, in the coastal zone, we're still in the more draconian existing regulations until the coastal commission are approved, where we're trying to get away from, you need a CDP to cut down a tree that might fall on your house in a storm, which is kind of where we're at right now, unfortunately, so. The other update that I wanted to give sort of countywide was just with respect to the highly pathogenic avian influenza, which has been absolutely devastating. And I just wanted to flag that, even if it hasn't, sort of hit local backyard flocks, in particular, this is likely to have ripple effects kind of for anyone who keeps poultry or livestock, because we are very concerned that we might see the loss of critical feed suppliers. Like I learned that Hunt and Barons, for instance, like 60% of their business is to large poultry producers in Sonoma County. And so that income just went to zero. And so, we're really hoping that some of our critical suppliers will, that's kind of, to me, like, that's like manzana is to apples, right? Like, you can't lose manzana and there's nowhere to, process your apples. Like, you lose Hunt and Barons and Petaluma, you're shipping everything from Modesto, and the trucking expense kills you as a farmer. So it's really concerning. We have lost millions of birds. Probably read about it in the newspaper, but if anyone has any questions, I think Debbie brought information. I think we have, sort of informational sheets that you can share, but it's really awful. And so I've been talking to David, most impact has been in his district. I've been talking to Andrew Smith, our ag commissioner. We're working to try to support, the poultry farmers and figure out what we can do. We declared a local emergency. There's not too much we can do beyond that, but trying to open up, potential federal assistance and state assistance like we are doing for the crab. So sort of depressing, but I feel like 3 of our really important food staples in Sonoma County, right? Like our fisheries, our eggs and our milk and dairy products are really all struggling right now. So like shop local, support the ones that are still here, because we want to keep them here, in my opinion. I like having a diversified agricultural system and being able to get those local food products.
Thank you very much for this update and for talking about the ripple effect. Based just on what you said regarding just Hunt and Barons, then that tells me when I go to order feed for my cattle, now it's going to be more expensive because they still have overhead to take care of, right? Thank you very much.
We have a request to step closer to the owl.
Oh, sorry, I thought we were talking about that. Yeah. Is there anything that I'm missing?
I did forget to mention that we are also looking at infrastructure for the fishermen, improving docks, the sports dock, marina, spud, and also seeing what we can do as far as building out those docks to make things a little bit easier for folks to use, because we do recognize and acknowledge that there's some issues with that infrastructure that's a little run down, and we're meeting with Parks next week to talk.
Yeah. One other thing actually that Shay reminded me of is we are also in the very, very infancy, like actually earlier than infancy, like prenatal phases of exploring and what's known as an enhanced infrastructure financing district. That is redevelopment 2.0. So it is a form of tax increment financing wherein you can utilize revenue without adding a new tax onto people. You're just taking a percent of that property tax growth over time, right? And reinvesting it in the community, and you can bond against it. So you can make all of those investments upfront, like you could during redevelopment. And so on Monday night or Tuesday night, I met with the city of Sebastopol. And next week, we will be moving forward an agenda item to grant them $50,000 to begin exploring this sort of in partnership with the county to hire a consultant to look at this as an opportunity. And they'll be looking sort of both at the city of Sebastopol, but also at more of a West County wide regional approach that would actually allow us to get some return to source property tax money that we could then use to do things like fix up community centers or, improve evacuation routes, or if there is, a new bridge that is needed or something like that, those kinds of critical infrastructure investments. And docks are something that could also be considered as part of that. Would be looking at the Bodega Bay Harbor. So it's an exciting opportunity. I've been pushing for it on the unincorporated governance ad hoc with Susan Gorin. And so that will actually be coming before the board, I believe on January 30th, to have an initial discussion of EIFDs, and then come back later for a formal policy adoption potentially. That's like, okay, the board is willing to commit 25% of a presumed 2 or 3% property tax growth over the next 30 or 45 years, that kind of a thing, to fund these sorts of projects.
Say again, please, what that program is.
It's called an enhanced infrastructure financing district. And it's really modeled after redevelopment, so it's tax increment financing. So you basically just, as property taxes grow over time, you skim a little bit off the top, and instead of sending it to the county's general fund, you actually invest it back into infrastructure in the community. And it would involve forming like a public financing authority with appointed representatives, coming up with a list of projects. There would be a whole engagement process that we would bring formally to both of our MACs and other communities not represented by MACs to ask, like, what are your asks to put on the list? So just wanted to flag that. And then Debbie reminded me that we also have our calendar of the significant items for the Board of Supervisors. So some of the really important ones, in February, we will have the unincorporated governance ad hoc work plan. And as I mentioned, on January 30th, we will have our initial discussion, I believe, of EIFDs. In March, we'll have a broadband program update, bike and pedestrian new program, and language access plan and policy workshop, as well as declaration of racism as a public health crisis, which DHS is working on. In April, we will have a vacation rentals update. This is not going to be sort of like a coastal zone conversation, but we might be able to at least ask them sort of the update on, the initial kind of baby steps around this licensing in the coastal zone. In May, we've got climate resilience comprehensive action plan, the care court implementation plan, which pertains to homelessness and renter protections. And then in June, public safety and environmental justice, general plan elements, and budget hearings. So if there are any major budget hearing asks, let us know sooner rather than later. And then in July, we'll have climate action resiliency blueprint. And we still do have funds from the community infrastructure funds that I was able to secure during last year's budget and the prior year's budget. And Che is going to be the point person on kind of moving those projects forward. So I would anticipate, with the huge need that we're seeing in our fishing community, that, we might be having some conversations with the Spud Point Marina Advisory Committee, about potentially making an investment in some of that infrastructure. So we do have the funding, and that seems like an appropriate sort of South Coast effort. If there are, efforts in the North Coast that we should be aware of, please let us know. But I think that's a good thing. We did go through and develop with everybody, the kind of guidelines for what we're looking for in terms of project proposals, but I don't know that we have project proposals from all of our different communities yet. Some of the more on it, Grayton already jumped on it. And then don't worry, we're saving money for the coast as well.
Yeah, send me something. Thank you.
Will do.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's it, unless I'm missing anything. We're good, all right.
Along the lines of the public infrastructure, the funds, this is just something for us to all think about. We badly need an indoor play space for children. We need a gymnasium out here. We have many children, their parents are working, and they come home to school, and then they're contained inside the home. There's no safe space for them to play and really be a kid, as we can hear next door, right? I know, isn't that nice? But I don't know how we get that done. I don't know where we put it. My assumption is there's plenty of property by the school, but I know that there's a complication because the school is part of a district outside of Sonoma County.
Right, so the one thing I would say along those lines is, I know I spoke with Elise last year about CSD for the southern Sonoma coast from Jenner down to Bodega Bay. With everything that happened last year, we didn't really get into that.
That would be great.
But I don't know, maybe we can, sort of look at some of that ideas going forward. Because I think there are, obviously, I love the Monterio building they have there, which is, it's a.
That was redevelopment.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, if we can find some way to, get some of that return to source money, that would be
Yeah, so two pieces of advice. Number one, I would love to have the conversation about CSD. I think that's a really, really exciting idea. There's some energy around that. That's what's happening in Drayton, and that's why they were at the front of the line for money, is because they want to create a community plaza, and they have a CSD that's willing to go, out and actually do what a CSD can do, which some CSDs are like, we're just gonna do the same thing we always done, we're gonna. But some of them are like, well, we actually have this expanded scope of authority that we haven't been using, and so why don't we get into the sort of parks and recreation space? Why don't we do these things? So I think that's a very exciting opportunity. In Guerneville, what has happened, because there was the same issue in Guerneville, and also, it's rainy, redwood's cold, like not as much, outside playtime, and not really very many amenities for kids. Was actually a nonprofit stepped up, and it actually just started with an individual business owner who didn't even have a nonprofit and was like, hey, I could turn this space into a gym, and did, and kids started coming, and it was this beautiful thing of kids having a place to go after school. And then he actually formed a nonprofit and made it official. And so there's kind of two routes, right? You can kind of go let's make it part of a local government, which I think is actually a really good step in the right direction. Or you can look to partner with a nonprofit who wants to work with, whatever spaces exist to enhance them, or to, whatever. So, but that's exactly the kind of thing that would be great for an EIFD. Definitely more money than we have for the existing community infrastructure funds, but that's the kind of EIFD project that I think would work.
Thank you.
We have one question from, any other questions? We have one question from the gallery. Were forest fuels management changes to the LCP kicked back by the CC?
That's a great question. I do not have specifics on that, but I can ask tenants what that, it sounds like it was just sort of like pages of not huge substantive types of comments, but a lot of questions. And so I can try to find out more about that.
I believe we have our public has questions.
Well, actually, Linda came through and took my whole comment away, because that's what I was wondering, the LCP was approved 6 months ago, and there's been very, very little information. But thank you for coming. And you guys are the conduit to the public for information. So help us out, keep the information coming, so we know what's going on, because it's really important. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Sarah Butaro, I am one of the board of directors of Sonoma County Tourism. Little update I can probably share that this afternoon in a 2-hour meeting, we went through the second round of funding grants to the visitor center throughout the county. So there is $100,000 slated to go to the board of directors for full approval, so that visitor centers everywhere will have the same messaging, same technology, all this kind of stuff. So that's a good thing.
That's great.
My question is, where is a copy of the draft or in the process LCP, so I can see what questions the postal commission has, what comments? I will say that in November, I'm hard to keep track of time, I was the only person that showed up live to even comment about the submission done by Ken Swick and his staff. And sorry, had to correct some major misstatements. So I want to be involved. 35-year resident, Bodega Bay, started our vacation rental company 30 years ago, and know that DOT is an important funding aspect for the county, primarily general fund. Most of it goes to the general fund. So that is a income revenue source that should be, I think, respected and shared. It's not, oh, we got to keep it a fishing village, right? Or get rid of tourists or something, which is comments that I've heard only recently. I did. So I look forward to maybe helping supplying. I have the original Coastal Commission LCP printed out in my office that I've used as a reference for over 35 years, plus all the original recorded documents about infrastructure at the day and what happened in the revision. So
Thank you.
And I think that's actually a really good thing, and if Tracy's there, we can make a note, but I think it would be really good to communicate with Permit Sonoma that it would be good to post an update about the status of the LCD, because they have a whole LCD website, and if there has been feedback from the coastal commission, there's no reason that we can't post that and sort of, post what the current status is, so we can definitely work on that, I think that's really great feedback, thank you.
Is it okay to ask a question or did I?
For-
You brought up a really good point. Can we see, what the coastal commission, what their concerns are? Is that something we get to see, the red line issues and their questions and how Permit Sonoma is responding?
Well, we probably can't, sort of know how they're responding until they actually respond.
Respond.
But I mean, everything that is sort of sent to government about government is a matter of public record, so it can absolutely be posted. I'll check with Permit Sonoma, but I don't see why it couldn't be posted on the website. It is government to government communication.
Okay, thank you.
So, one other thing is, the new ambulances with the new contract over in 101. I wonder if you, Linda, if you have any idea of how that will affect us out here, because obviously we had SCFD provided our ambulances before. I saw, there was a conversation on our Facebook group about, whether people were concerned that our ambulances are now going to end up in, Santa Rosa or something. As I understand, they're buying a lot more ambulances. So in general, we shouldn't be without coverage. This shouldn't affect coverage.
Yeah, no, I obviously can't speak for Sonoma County
Right.
Fire District, but I can say that I
Yeah.
did the Ribbon Cutting War, and there were all of these beautiful, brand new shiny ambulances that are being deployed in the exclusive operating area, so that the exclusive operating area is well covered. And that, quite frankly, I believe that one of the reasons that SCFD even applied for this is that they were frustrated that constantly they were actually being called in as mutual aid into the Corps, taking services away from the coast. So, I think that having Steve Hertzberg as the assistant chief and a real driving force on this whole, public EMS thing is very much in the coast's favor in terms of, his whole goal has always been a stronger system. And so, my understanding was they were actually trying to bolster services.
Right.
Out here as well, and as they generate revenue, their plan is to reinvest it in the system to provide better service and more coverage too, so.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Supervisor Hopkins? Okay,
Are there any other questions online for Supervisor Hopkins?
there are none. All right. What? Okay. Right, so we do not, okay, so I will introduce myself. So I am Brian Leubitz. I'm the chair of the MAC and the Bodega Bay representative.
I'm Beth Frisoni, the vice chair, Bodega Valley Port representative.
I'm Jill Leubitz, the general representative.
I'm Scott Foster, the new Timber Cove representative.
I'm Caroline Madden, the Fort Ross representative. And Ginny, feel free to unmute yourself and introduce. We can't hear you, but Ginny Nichols is listening in, and she's a Bodega Bay representative. Oh,
Yes, I'm a Bodega Bay resident. Can you hear me now? And representing the Bodega Bay area, along with Brian. Thank you.
Okay, so we will now move on to our public comment. Do you all have something additional to what you already had earlier? Okay.
Any comments that are not on the agenda? Related to items not on the agenda, or wait.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, okay, so seeing no public comment, if there's anybody on the Zoom who would like to do a comment that's not on our agenda, please raise your hand now. I'm assuming there's nobody on there.
no.
Okay, so I will move on. We do have an item that came up recently with respect to a 1 acre outdoor cannabis cultivation It is along Valley Form Freestone Road. As I understand it now, I'm gonna. Beth, you spoke to them as the.
Yes, I did, I
Valley
spoke to them.
Area.
So the permit that, the application that we received, there was a lot of information on it. It was, very, very complicated. I spoke with Ken Compton, I believe is the gentleman's last name, he's the planner. And it's taking a 40,000 square foot operation that's already fully permitted to 43,000 square feet to fill out their 1 acre allowance. And it's a unique operation that it has 4 cultivators that each have 10,000 square feet. So I'm not sure what they're gonna do with the additional 3,000. But there is a process for this. This was just an initial notice. There will be plenty of other notices and potential, public hearings if requested, I'm assuming. But this is just the beginning of the process for them to be able to expand their cultivated area.
All right, so the question now is, do we want to do a land use ad hoc for this? I don't know if anybody has any opinions on whether that's something that we would like to consider. Beth, that is your coverage area. Do you think that's a worthwhile discussion?
I think after speaking with the planner, my thought on this is that we should consider doing an ad hoc, but revisit it at the next meeting.
Okay.
I think we need some more information. I need to speak with more of the people directly involved to see if they are going to have an opposition, if they're gonna want this to be, or we don't wanna clog any kind of meeting and committee pathway if
Well,
we don't need.
As I understand it, Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, the chair doesn't have for an ad hoc, we don't need to have the ADA meeting, correct?
I think that is
Yeah.
correct, because it's less than a quorum.
Right.
So a
Okay.
group can begin to meet.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
If
so we can circle back and if we want to do an ad hoc, that the
Okay,
next chair can decide on their own prerogative to do that. Okay, so is there any other question about that, or are we ready to move on? Okay, so we have another item, which is our selection of our 2024 chair, which, so reluctant as I will be to yield this fantastic gavel. Let's go ahead and start with a nomination election of chair. Would anybody like to nominate a chair?
I'd like to nominate Beth.
I second it.
All right, okay, we have one nomination for chair. Are there any other people who would like to consider for chair? Seeing none, Beth, would you like to make a comment?
I would be happy to help out the MAC and represent my community as the chair of the municipal advisory council.
I think that would be a fantastic thing. So, at this point, I think we have a motion and a second for Beth to be the next chair. So, all in favor of Beth Bruton for chair of the MAC? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations.
Thank you. Wow.
She's on.
Okay, so I think your first order of operation is the nomination election of vice chair.
Okay, so does anyone have an interest in becoming vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Scott Foster.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Okay, then we need to help me out with the proper.
Second.
We need a second to
Yes,
nominate.
I would love to second that.
Okay. Then all in favor of Scott Foster for chair, or vice chair?
Yeah.
Aye,
Aye. Scott, you're.
okay, fantastic.
Can I just butt in here? Since I'm the vice chair. This is a little bit about my background for people who don't know me. I've been in public service since I was in high school, specifically in medical and emergency services. I worked nights to work my way through college. I worked in an ER. Then I had a 26-year career in the Navy as a healthcare executive, running hospitals around the world, several Pentagon tours, doing resources and healthcare policy. Then I ran Coast Life Support for 10 years. And I've been on Pimlico Fire Department since I moved here in 2006 until a couple of years ago. I see this as an opportunity to continue my service to the community. I know the game and a lot of players. I know how to do this stuff, and so I want to help.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Scott. Really appreciate it. Okay.
All right. So, am I officially chair?
You are the-
Today.
Now you're-
Fine now. All right.
Now you're leading.
Okay. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much. Now we need to discuss the Brown.
I'm going to. bring-
Can you check Q&A? I'm getting
Nothing on there.
nothing on there. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, this has to do,
Now, is there supposed to be an image showing on the screen?
not yet.
Okay.
Oh, but the light was supposed to warm up, so I don't know why, I might have to redo that. Okay.
We're gonna step out, I'm gonna step out.
Oh,
of
but
that.
that was so fun.
Thank y'all.
Okay, so I'm told we need to double check the questions, that there are questions in there somewhere.
We have three answered questions.
Well, we can, well,
you know.
So somebody. who-
Tracy,
Is
can
the
you
growth
bring
project
somebody
in the
in?
coastal
Let
zone?
me know what.
Okay.
But they still need to be answered. Like publicly.
But
Oh,
we
no,
can, but we can do, they can be unmuted. Right, we can, Tracy's monitoring on the other side, she can bring people into the room.
I am, yes, I'm still here.
All right, do you want to unmute Scott?
Sure.
Should we turn off some of the lights so we can see the screen?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hi, Scott.
hi. I just was questioning if the grow project was in the coastal zone, the Freestone Grow project.
Yes. I believe it is.
So does it,
Isn't it?
being a grow project in the coastal zone,
Wait, no, it's not. It's not. It's right across the street. Thank you. It is not in the coastal zone. It's across the street from the coastal zone. You couldn't have had it. In the grow would not have been allowed in the coastal zone.
that's why I asked.
It's already permitted. It's just expanding it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that, Scott.
That was the other stuff.
Yeah, Scott.
Old stuff.
Trying to see if I can make this go away, so it's not in the. No way to put that.
Linda's, yeah, she's. Chief of staff.
Tracy is
Chief of staff, chief of staff.
So welcome to the Brown Act training of 2024. We'll just go through these slides and feel free to ask questions as we go. And we'll go from there. Let's see. It should be, oh, okay, there we go. Okay, so the Brown Act is California legislation that protects public transparency and awareness of what government bodies are doing. And so sometimes it feels a little bit awkward. Everything has to be agendized, and that's why if there's something that comes up during items that aren't on the agenda, council members can bring something up, but once you get into conversation about it, the reason that would be a Brown Act violation is that the public didn't have a chance to know ahead of time that that was going to be discussed at the meeting. And so it's not that things can't be discussed, they just have to be noticed. And so this will kind of, some of the things in this presentation are things that really we as staff are responsible for, like getting meeting notices publish 72 hours ahead of time. You aren't responsible for that, but you'll work with us on that, and so.
So quick question on that, Debbie, because this is one of the biggest confusing areas we have. It's that someone say during public comment, they can ask us the question, but policy, if it's a question that is about making policy, we cannot discuss it or answer it. But if it's a question like, when is the next MAC meeting, or do you know when the next fire department board meeting is? All we can answer anything that's procedural or generally available public information. We can't, but we cannot discuss policy.
Right,
Is that
anything
correct?
that you would discuss and make a recommendation to the
Right,
board
right,
of supervisors on, but if you're just giving facts,
Just
that's
bad,
fine, and it when in doubt, check.
right,
Yeah, but in general, that's correct.
right,
It's, decision making items.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so then you'll hear about quorums and how many people can talk about items and ad hocs and how we form those. And that is because of one or two of you, or even up to 4 of you, because this is a body of 9, can discuss an item outside of a meeting. But what you have to be careful about, and we'll talk about that in a future slide, is having it become a serial meeting and then having somebody else, if 3 people talk about a subject matter that would come before you, and then and then 2 of those people go off and each speak to somebody else. Well, now you've created a serial meeting is what that is called, and it's more than a quorum discussing something. So that's why we do make ad hoc committees, and we make sure that they're less than a quorum, and that's the reasoning for that. If you all find yourself at a social event that isn't about, you can socialize with one another. You don't have to be worried so much about that, but do stay aware of public perception. If you all go somewhere and it's more than a quorum and you're all huddled up in the corner, you would want to be careful about something like that. But with how spread out the Coast MAC is, it's probably not likely that you're going to find yourself in a situation like that. But you wouldn't want to all, like, say, go out to dinner after a MAC meeting, because the public would say, well, look, your whole MAC is there now. That wasn't an agendized meeting.
Is it that we couldn't go out to dinner after a meeting, we simply may not discuss?
Correct. That's the letter of the law.
That's the letter of the
But you
law.
also have to think about the public perception. So if you're huddled together in.
Right, hush, hush.
Right.
But if y'all end up at Burger King by accident, you know, none of us are, but you know.
And so that's why I just talked about the serial meetings. That can also happen by way of email or text messaging, so it's not just in person. So that is why when I send out meeting notices or information from the county, I'll blind copy all of you. So it's one email and I'll say, dear Coast MAC representatives and alternates. And that makes me remember too, there are 9 of you. There's 9 members in the body, and then there's 7 alternates. That makes a quorum is 5, and that quorum of 5 could be any number of alternates or representatives. So they also count in that. So you would want to be careful about communicating. So if there's something that you think is really interesting and relevant to all of the Coast MAC, and you want all of the reps to have that, send it to me or Che, actually, and we'll get it out.
Or to the chair. That's when you read about the board requirements in the Brown Act, send it to either the representative or to the chair.
Right.
Because the chair can individually have interactions if they're informational only.
Yeah, Beth could send things out in a one-way, one-way direction, but if you know, you have staff. So,
Oh,
feel good. And so now this is an interesting piece. I don't know if some of you may have had Brown Act training before, and I don't know if there's an awareness around this social media aspect. So, you know, we all use social media, and if you see an item, that is something that would be a topic of the Coast MAC, and you comment your opinion on that, or you like, or, you know, thumbs up or whatever, and other MAC members could then see that is now by law considered a Brown Act violation. So it's recommended, it's really hard, it's recommended not to like or discuss things on social media, especially if there is a quorum that could see that. So yeah,
And that's relatively new.
that
piece
is
relatively.
that is relatively new. So another piece of this with the social media is that because you are appointed representatives, you can't block people either.
Really?
So if there are, we have.
Personally?
If we have a personal, if we have a personal Facebook,
That's a question that came up, well, yes, on your personal Facebook, if you use it for Mac business. Or Mac, yeah, like if you're going to be forwarding things about the Mac, then you can't block people from that. And I know there can be, you know, look, that sometimes there's trolls and you just don't want to see that. And that's something that elected and appointed people don't have the luxury of doing. We can't block people, and we can't, so there's some questions that came up last week at the river map presentation that I have to get some clarification from county council. But there were questions about blocking people maybe that are from outside of this jurisdiction, and they are, you know, harassing you for your other business that you do. I think somebody asked a question like, I have a music business and it's not at all related to the map. Can I block somebody that's being a troll? And I'm gonna get clarification from county council on that, and I can also share that information back with you about the extent of that. It's difficult because one of the things that, you know, one of the reasons you all are on the map is because you have social networks in the community and you share information and you gather information. So we wouldn't want you to not be able to use that to share out information, but you do have to be careful, like next door, you have to be approved in order to use Nextdoor. So technically, we can't post on Nextdoor.
oh, so we can't even announce the meeting then on Nextdoor.
One of the bits of clarification that I want to get is that if it's also if the same information is posted on sites that are
Okay.
free and open, can you replicate that information and also put it on Nextdoor? So I have to get clarification on that. And I wanted to wait and bring all of the questions from both of the trainings, but that is something that came up. Let me see. Oh, that's, what else? You may respond, like, the river map has an active Facebook page. The Coast MAC has a Facebook page. It isn't very active. It's a group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
And it's something,
We have to look at that.
Right, but if somebody posts something that is absolutely like not factual and it's sort of troll-like, we can't delete these things. Because it's a government page.
Right.
But you can respond with a rebuttal advising, that this isn't within the MAC jurisdiction and, but you can't take it down because it's a public government site. And so the Coast MAC site, if we wanna, make that, I think because the River MAC is so close together, there's more overlap, whereas there's many different circles of communication that take place in the Coast MAC. And some are email distribution lists and so forth. So that is that page. And so here is if somebody posts something on social media and you want to avoid it becoming a Brown Act violation, what you can do is message that person and say, let's talk about this offline. And you can
Okay.
email with them or private message with them. It's just the piece about having your co-council members involved in that communication. That's where the social media
Piece comes
piece
in.
comes
So
in.
could we say, take this to Department of Public Works? Could we say, take this to Linda Hopkins'
You can
office?
give factual
We can give factual
information.
information.
Yeah, you can give
Okay.
factual information, absolutely,
Okay.
right, but if it's something that you think would be, a discussion item
Mhm.
that would come to the MAC, that's where you don't want to have those conversations. So connecting with any of the staff at District 5, that does not constitute a serial meeting. We can talk to all of you. We wouldn't go to each of you and say, how do you feel about this? And you are an advisory board, so a lot of what I'm saying is, with the Board of Supervisors, it would be you wouldn't, a staff member wouldn't go to each one and say, how do you think about this? How do you think about this? Because that would be a violation of the Brown Act. But as you are all in an advisory mode, that probably would never even come up. But, it's one PowerPoint for everybody. And the staff shouldn't ask like, well, what's your opinion on this? And then tell somebody, tell another member, because that would be a serial meeting. And then this is the part I mentioned before. It's not a meeting if you go to a social or a ceremonial event where no business of the MAC is discussed. Or if you're at a community forum, or, if you go to a Board of Supervisors meeting, you can certainly get up and speak and not consider that. If there's more than a quorum of you at a Board of Supervisors meeting, you could each get up and speak, and that wouldn't be a Brown Act violation. As long as you don't discuss amongst yourselves in the audience.
And if that previously this has come up, several of us wanted to go to a river meeting, and we were told we couldn't go but I believe actually we are not river maps.
Mhm.
So I actually, I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear what you're saying, because I thought that was the case, what you were saying.
Right, so I will double check, but I think if the river map had an agenda item that was of interest to more than a quorum of you, I think you could go and you could be in the audience.
Just be careful about talking.
Right,
You wouldn't want to
right.
talk with each other, yeah. I don't even think I have to ask that question, I just answer it. And so this is a piece about, the staff side of things, and you'll hear from us about this process. For a regular meeting, the agenda has to be posted 72 hours in advance. So that is, for Thursday meetings, that's Monday, I say at 5, it would be 5:30, but I say Monday at 5. I do get the agenda to all of you at the latest by Friday at 5, so that you have the weekend to review it. Aim for maybe sort of Wednesday or Thursday, but Friday at the latest. And one of the things we do at the county is any documentation that goes on the internet, on the county website, gets remediated for ADA accessibility for people using screen readers. And so that takes a little bit of time. That goes through the IT department. And sometimes I will send the items out to you on Friday, but they'll still be either, that process might still be taking place, but as long as they're posted by 5 Monday, we've met the 72-hour guideline. And then anything, if say we have a presenter coming and they get some materials to us the day before the meeting, what we need to do is get that on the website before we send it to you, or it's actually at the same time. We can't set, within 72 hours, we can't send you materials until they're available for the public as well. So just, that's really something that we need to keep track of, but it helps you to understand it so that you understand why things maybe get held up a little bit. A special meeting only needs 24 hours notice. So if you're gonna call a special meeting and this group meets every other month, if something comes up in between and your chair calls a special meeting, then we can post the agenda 24 hours before that meeting. And the item, the agenda, has a little description so that when we post it, anybody reading the agenda can see what the item is about. And they have to be publicly accessible. We post them at the Board of Supervisors on the bulletin board. All of the boards and commissions are posted there. And then we also aim to get them posted at the location where the meeting is. And that's something that we ask the people in the locations and try to email them and ask people to tape them up if we can't get out there. Every regular meeting must allow members of the public to speak on an item not on the agenda, as long as it's within the subject matter of the legislative body or the MAC. This isn't a legislative body. A special meeting does not need to have public comment. You're calling that special meeting for a particular purpose. And it's the regular meetings that have the public comment for items not on the agenda. And before a vote, the public must be allowed to speak on that item of business. And we do keep a time limit for public comment. And anytime somebody is using an interpreter in public comment, they get at least double the allotted time for their public comment. So if we have public comment for 2 minutes and somebody's using our interpretation services, then they would get 4 minutes. And so
just really quick to go back to that, I just want to clarify the special meeting. We are not required to have public comment, but if the chair can open the floor to public comment if the chair so deems that it is, as long as it's been in the agenda that is posted.
yeah, right. Well, I want to be clear. Public comment on items on the agenda
Always, okay, so it's not,
It's the piece that's the public comment on items not on the agenda.
Thank
That's
you.
required to be on every regular meeting agenda. That's not required to be on a special meeting
Okay,
agenda.
thank you for that.
Yeah, I think I was not clear on that. So now we'll talk about teleconference rules. And so currently, all meetings need to take place with a quorum, either in the room or with, under AB 2449, a member can do up to 2 meetings for specific circumstances, which will be on a future slide. Traditional Brown Act teleconferencing has always been available. And if a member is unable to attend in person, then they would notify staff well in advance of the agenda being published. And their location where they're teleconferencing in from would be posted on the agenda. And the public would be, it would be required that the public would be allowed to come into that space. So generally, people would not use that teleconference option from their home. But what some Coast MAC members have done in the past is make arrangements to have a satellite teleconference location set up at fire station up on the North Coast. And that would allow public to come in. We would have the owl set up, and the members could be there and they would be voting members. When that happens, then all votes are by roll call anytime there's a teleconference meeting. So those are the traditional rules, and you could do as many of those as you needed to. So if there were, you know, inclement weather through the winter, and we had time to put that on the agenda, we could make arrangements to have a satellite location. In order to do that, you have to have a quorum of the meeting, a quorum of the members within the jurisdiction. So if you're out of town, if you're traveling, you don't count towards the quorum. But so you can't make quorum by participating remotely. But you can still participate remotely if there is a quorum in person. And so each location must be identified on the agenda. The agenda would have to be posted at the teleconference location, as well as a standard posting location, accessible to the public. And the public would be able to make public comment from each location, and all of the votes would be by roll call. So that is the traditional teleconferencing. And then AB 2449, and that sunsets at the end of 2026. And that allows a member under either just cause or emergency circumstances, which we'll talk about on the next slide, to participate remotely. And the video needs to remain on, and there's just a few things that administratively we need to take care of. But just cause, the member notifies the body. So in emergency circumstances, the member requests, and then there's a vote. So if somebody cannot attend because they have a child care or caregiving need for a child, parent, grandchild, sibling, spouse, or domestic partner, then they could attend remotely. under this AB 2449, if they have a contagious illness that prevents them from attending in person, or a need related to a physical or mental disability not otherwise accommodated for, or travel. This is probably not something that would happen if you're traveling on official business for the MAC. Then you can attend by just cause. Field trips? So far, no. And then under emergency circumstances, that's a physical or family and medical emergency that prevents the member from attending in person, doesn't require disclosure of any diagnosis or disability, or any personal medical information that's already exempt under existing law. And then and that would be on the agenda, or it would be added to the agenda, and then there would be a vote on that to allow the person. And you can only have 2 virtual attendances per year under AB 2449. So
Where you can vote.
right, you can always attend as a member of the public if you can't come, but you wouldn't. This meeting, we did include anybody who wasn't attending as a council member. All of our alternates, we sent links because this is the Brown Act training, but we sent panelist links to everybody. But in general, if you're not attending as a MAC representative, you would attend as a member of the public, and you would ask questions at the same time as the public. And you wouldn't have the opportunity to, and you wouldn't vote. Right.
If your alternate came, like if you were, it had an emergency or something, if they get to vote and
Yes.
stepping in your stead, and.
Wait, if you're, so if your alternate comes
Yeah,
to a meeting for you,
right.
then they vote, there are, but our bylaws and common sense, if they weren't at the meeting that the minutes are being approved for, they would abstain from that. That is why we don't have a quorum to approve the minutes tonight. Because we don't have a quorum of people who were at the last meeting. But there are some things, if it turns out that we don't have the ability to do that, I had that question. And we could find a workaround for that. If it's impossible to move forward, we still can get the minutes approved. So this is just a little bit more of the details about utilizing AB 2449. You all certainly do not have to memorize this. If you were going to be attending by this, we would we would coach you through this. So you would just, publicly disclose at the beginning of the meeting that if there's anybody 18 years of age or older in the room, and the general nature of the member's relationship with that individual, you have to keep your camera on the entire time. And then the number of times that you can do it, and it has to be remote. We have to be able to allow public comment through Zoom in order for it to take place. So if we had people attending by AB 2449, and even if we lost our Zoom connection somehow, we would have to stop the meeting. And then this slide, I mean, the MAC, as soon as we went from being all exclusively Zoom to being in person, we immediately learned how to keep the meetings hybrid, because there was such an appreciation from the community to be able to attend. So this slide is just reinforcing that, of course, we're still allowed to have remote meetings now that that were required to meet in person, as long as there's sufficient staff resources to allow, hybrid meetings, boards and commissions certainly can continue to do that. I think there was some question when there was this big requirement to go back in March 2023. Can we still do Zoom? And we can, and we have been. And so this is the part about Nextdoor. So the social media platforms that we use to communicate on matters within the MAC's jurisdiction should be open and accessible to the public, free of charge, and do not require approval for participation from the social media site or a third party. So Nextdoor requires approval to join, and private groups on Facebook that require approval of a moderator to join are not open and accessible. So I know there are some of these, I'm on one of them, and the Lower Russian River has one too. So we had a big conversation about how can we make sure that we're reaching people, because these are big community sources of information, without violating the Brown Act. So that is something that I need to clarify. I mentioned that earlier, that if information is being posted on these sites, is that okay if it's also being posted elsewhere as well? So that will be something that I will get some clarification from you on, for you, from your county council. And this brings us to the end. In your packets are all of these documents, all of these slides. So if you wanted to go and peruse any of these resources, you could learn more about these. But also, if you have questions, reach out to me. I am freakishly interested in this kind of stuff. And so it wouldn't be a bother at all. And if I don't know the answer, I would love to find it out for you. I think, you know, at the heart of what all of this is it's not restrictive. It is making sure that the public gets to participate so that's the intent of just making it. And that's what you all are about. That's what the MAC is about. So, it's nothing to be worried about, but it's important to know what the rules are so that you don't inadvertently break them, because they're not common sense rules.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, all this new information about the social media, the restrictions, was that passed legislatively? How did the legislature revisit the Brown Act and amend it?
I think it was case law. I think it came up through it being, like, I don't think they changed Brown Act to include that, but it was ruled that it was included in that, because
these are very detailed requirements, policy.
right. So I think interpretation expanded is what happened, because there wasn't social media when the Brown Act was written.
But it's been interpreted in a very restrictive way, and I just wondered who's to blame for that.
I think
I believe I actually remember reading about case,
Oh.
a specific case about, because when I worked for like political candidates in the past, we actually, in the middle of the process, had to stop blocking people. So, and then that actually went to the Supreme Court or something.
I mean, you see Linda's Facebook, there's some horrible things that people say on it. She's unable to leak those.
So,
yeah. So it came through there being court cases and the court looking at Brown Act and looking at social media and saying, well, actually, now we've made a ruling. And once that ruling is there, then there's the guidance that comes along with it, because before there's a ruling, everyone can kind of just make their own interpretations. But once there is, then council advises
Can you decline friend requests?
As long as you're using your social media for just your stuff and not MAC business, absolutely. If you're using it.
I mean, that makes sense, but.
I think you have to, right?
I'm gonna clarify that.
I think it's also, it's only substantive stuff, so if you were going to like have engaging conversations, but if you're an advisory member of advisory council, if you are only posting like, this is the meeting, you know, please attend this meeting on Thursday. Your account at that point isn't still less, your account is still person.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I was interpreting it as by posted or about meetings or anything, then you might be open to this.
I think, and I'm gonna get clarification, I think it's just getting into discussions about,
Sure.
so just resist that.
As a rule of thumb, right,
Yeah.
resist the like button.
Yeah, resist the like button.
Resist the
And
like button.
I have to do that too, because I am elected in another body and, you know, I wanna like things and I'm like, I can't like them. And so then these are a bunch of resources here, and we're also keeping our eye on AB 817 and this MAC, I'll tell you what that is, and also the River MAC both wrote letters in support of AB 817 back in May, and it got stalled, and now it's moving along again. And what that would do is allow bodies that are comprised solely of appointed members and are in an advisory role. Members could attend hybrid anytime they want. So it wouldn't require the AB 2449 anymore. There would still be the requirement to have the all the teleconferencing rules about roll call votes and having the camera on, but you wouldn't have that limit of twice a year, and it wouldn't be restricted to those just cause. You could be, you know, it's a long drive and I can't make it. And, you know, a lot of communities, are really advocating for that because it allows for greater membership and participation in boards, commissions, advisory councils. We have a lot of boards and commissions that meet in Santa Rosa. That cuts people off who live, you know, several hours away from participating in that. So we are, from the county, it's one of the priorities for legislative action this year. And they are really putting forward support for this AB 817, and it was passed by the local government committee last week, the week before January 10th, and now it's going to appropriations. So we'll keep you apprised of that, and if that happens, I think it would also help with recruitment for members of that.
Yeah, yes.
Because some people, you know, it's been really hard to reach people from like way up in the Annapolis. It's a long drive to come to these meetings.
But when we do have, yes, it would be helpful with recruitment, but you know, when we do have volunteers step forward, it's awfully important to embrace them.
Absolutely.
And they're highly qualified ones, especially.
And the ability to be able to attend remotely it will really help with that. So that's the end. That is the end.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate the effort you put into that. All right, so now we're looking at a discussion on agenda development going forward.
Chair, if I may.
Yes,
Just a point of information.
Thank you.
I just got some contact from the Timber Cove 911 has been restored. Casadero is still out. And I do know that Scott has something that I think would be very interesting to agendize. If I could put you on the spot for mobile clinics. I was just emailing
Yeah.
your permit, about your permits.
Really? Oh, this is good stuff.
I would like at a future meeting, to have a presentation by the Men and Women's Health Alliance, which is, I'm also on board of that organization. Easier to explain if you look at their website, but we provide, healthcare and, support for, medical needs of the community that kind of fall outside of the conventional things. We do a lot of home care, coordinating for home care, we coordinate hospice. If somebody's at the hospital, we'll work with their discharge nurse to bring them home, get them settled. We do aging in place stuff, we do matter of balance stuff, we have a very successful addiction support program. The organization is entirely run on grants. We have an amazing executive director, Michelle Point. We just got $300,000 from Jim Wood, and we purchased a mobile clinic, the 30-foot RV with 2 exam rooms, and we're about to purchase a mobile dental clinic. And those will, the organization is based in Guala, which is, I haven't seen it technically, but the range of service is going to be down through Timber Cove and sort of with the population is down there and then up to Manchester. The mobile clinic will serve those areas specifically, not the core where the clinic, there's already a clinic there. This will allow school physicals or kids to go to the doctor and the parent doesn't have to take the whole day off. You know, all of that, or older people who can't make it to either place. Anyway, I think it would be a really nice thing to have a presentation as part of our meeting at some point.
That's
To be aware of the services that are there and what we can do and how maybe that can be expanded.
Thank you. That, and the name of that again was
Mendonoma Health
Oh, no.
Alliance.
That's
I look at the website.
okay.
It's, I mean, the programs we offer are extraordinary. It is almost entirely funded with grants. There's a staff, full-time staff of 5 and a nice office. And go on. I mean, it's amazing. Community support grants have just turned into a dynamic, widely recognized and supported organization.
Thank you. We'll definitely, we'll put that on the front burner for our next agenda. Thank you very much.
And the D5 team just sent a letter of support from the department for that.
I'm say that again.
The D5 team about 5 minutes ago sent a letter of support to the permit department.
Can we see that? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the suggestions that has been made is that we look at the Board of Supervisors future calendar and try to align some of our agenda items with those. That is certainly something we can consider. I just want to make sure that we have room to discuss on the agendas what's important to the community at that point in time. I think that's very important.
I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you. And I am hoping that our next meeting will be able to see more faces and have more bodies here, and that makes for better discourse for these kind of conversations. But don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to Jay about what future agenda items we're going to want. Yes.
No, you can help.
But that was it. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, the agenda making has been a real, I've brought this up many times and I'm going to bring it up again, which is that frequently there will be an item on the agenda that I get, you know, just a very few days ahead. And I realize that there are people in the community that have expertise, and I would like them to be able to participate and contribute, but it's too late. It's too late because we've already chosen who the presenters are, and a presenter is someone who can sit up here and have a dialogue with us. Don't interrupt, please. And so, because my bone of contention is that then people have been, you know, has told me, well, have your presenters, all of these people with incredible expertise, come and sit in the audience and give a 2-minute comment that we can't have a dialogue with. So we have valuable resources, people that have real contributions to make, that I can't get them up here to be part of the conversation, and they are limited to 2 minutes with no interaction from us, and I hate that, and I wish that there was an opportunity for us to see the, you know, to have a little more input into the agenda before it gets frozen, and we get it in an email, and then there's not much we can do. And I can give you a poor example. The very first meeting that I attended as a MAC rep, I get the agenda, and there's something about a bicycle race. You know, I think, oh yeah, I love the bicycle race. You know, this is interesting. But I happened to have a group of advisors because I was new to the MAC, and I had a group of people who were very involved in the LCP and had a lot of land use policy and background, and I just circulate. I said, here's the agenda. Is there anything that I should know so that I can be a good MAC rep? And they said, oh, they raised all these red flags. They said this bike race is going to come down Willow Creek Road, and that's like, you know, in the winter, you know, in the spring, and it's going to be muddy, and there's going to be 400 bicycles, and it's going to really destroy a lot of the ecosystem up there. And besides, the LCP says that Willow Creek is actually a highly protected, highly sensitive area. So how can you let 400 bicycles be going through? So that was like, I thought, well, these people should come and be able to present.
So, can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Generally how we have operated in the past is that on specific agenda items, we haven't had harsh 2-minute limits. That hasn't really been the case. So primarily, we've been generally pretty conversational because we haven't had huge audiences here. So we've had opportunities, even with the LCP discussion, there was a lot of back and forth. We haven't really had, as long as we've agendized them, we've had plenty of opportunity for folks to fully engage. With respect to, without getting into specifics on any one particular issue, I think, you know, on specific issues where there are, you know, one particular point of view, I mean, I think, you know, all the members of the MAC have the ability to speak to some of those issues, but then also, you know, if there's more time needed for individual at the meetings, you know, I think as chair, I didn't have a problem with folks exceeding the 2 minutes. So, I mean, I don't think that's been traditionally a problem. I think there is some importance of the chair to be able to run the meeting. So that, you know, we can all get in and out on a timely basis, but generally, I don't think we've had a huge problem with people not being able to have conversations back and forth. Just because these meetings have generally not been overburdened on that.
Well, I think that's, you know, the one time that we really did allow a conversation, which was, people said it was the best MAC meeting ever. That was great, but traditionally, and I think even it's a violation, I have to have, you know, their dialogue with people that are just giving
No.
comment.
That's not a violation.
Okay.
On agendized items.
On agenda item. So I hear what you're saying.
You know, what I'm, you know, I do think that there are often, I mean, often when an item is presented, it's the permits and will come and give their perspective, but then there's other people in the community that have equally opposite information that they, and these are not like just shoot from the lip people. These are people that are very studied and have real expertise on the subject. And I would like to have some way to be able to invite them on as a panelist.
So what we will do going forward, I hear everything you're saying, and I know that you totally understand that everybody that's here today and online, we are in this group because of our interactions with the community, right? And, let's look at setting the agenda a little sooner than we do going forward. I'm gonna talk to Debbie and Jay about that, and then, and there's nothing that says we have to wait till 72 hours to release it. We can release it as soon as we want. And then we can make changes to that agenda as long as it's not after the 72-hour mark.
Right, but the problem is that, because I had this conversation with Lise, I mean, probably 4 or 5 times, you know, which is, I couldn't add someone to the panel. No, there's a time limit, because the agenda has already been set. So it's like, is there some way that in the setting of, when you are in dialogue with Debbie, I'm imagining, or Che, I'm not sure who sets the agenda with you, as you begin to like get a framework, you know, it's not completely decided, but you kind of have a framework, like you think, oh, we're gonna have this presentation and that presentation. Could you just let us know what you're thinking, so that we might say, oh, you know, there's someone that has actually a perspective on this that you might want to include, and then you can decide if you do want to include it, but then have, you know, once we see that agenda, it's so frozen, there's no way to get anybody new.
Well, we'll work on this. Well, let me explore some things.
I have a suggestion. So the chair and the vice chair are the agenda setting committee, and they can't really engage the whole MAC in agenda setting because that would be a Brown Act violation.
There are Brown Act.
So what I wonder is if it might be useful to come up with something similar to the Board of Supervisors calendar of upcoming significant events. As the agenda setting committee starts coming up with, these are the calendar of items that we would like to bring to the Coast MAC, that can then in itself be an agenda item. So these are future agenda items that we're working on. And then if there is a particular person, not everybody is going to have input on every item, but if you see something, oh, that's something that I know some experts, then you can reach out to staff, and it's going to be Chase soon. I'm training him up to be your staff, but I'll always be here to help too. But then you can reach out to him, or you can reach out to your chair and your vice chair, and anybody could have the opportunity to do that, any of the MAC members, because it would be on the agenda, and you will have already been provided with a list. Maybe not, this is what's going to be on this month, and this is, but you might have a list of, these are some upcoming agenda items that we're working on, and this one's going to be in March, and this one might be sometime in the future. That's one way, and that would cover you for Brown Act, and then, and I think it would make it simpler than having everybody involved in every agenda. I don't.
Not also suggesting that at all,
Right, but that's, yeah.
So that is definitely a way we can go, just as long as everybody understands we need flexibility in that particular ride. We had an ad hoc that, for that. Permit, and that was a very short notice thing for all of us in a nightmare. That was a nightmare. So I hear you on that. My other thought on this is we'll have items come up that we want our constituents to be able to have free discourse on with us, and that would be a town hall or a special meeting. So that's something else we can explore to give more ability to have those conversations.
Right.
Is this Robert Rules old order kind of show?
It's Rosenberg.
Rosenberg's, yeah.
Rosenberg's rules of order,
Okay, well,
which is very similar.
I mean, normally you introduce something as a new business item and you cannot take action. You have new business and you have old business, and the new business requires that you lay all this stuff out and you gather information, and then the next meeting you deal with it as old business, and you're giving everybody a chance to think.
That's not the way these.
Yeah.
We don't make decisions.
We,
Well, also,
Do we vote?
when we do things,
Not yet.
so the things that we have done is, traditionally, we send letters, basically, so we send letters to the board of supervisors that says. The chair, the MAC feels this way. When we have done that recently, it's been that we have authorized our chair or somebody else. So, for example, your predecessor, Scott, the other Scott, wrote several, old Scott. Wrote several letters about broadband.
I can hear you.
yeah.
So he wrote letters about broadband and state parks. And so we had just authorized him to do those. So traditionally, it's that because we don't have time to actually author such letters at the meeting,
Yeah.
we say, this is how the board, the MAC feels. Chair, please write a letter and let it to the. This way.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else that we want to talk about regarding the agendas? Okay. I have one other thing to say.
Oh, can I just add one more thing?
Yeah.
And that is the members of the MAC and then the public, and if there's agenda items, they should reach out to the chair and the vice chair
Mhm.
to bring those forward, because a lot of the times that, you and I, we didn't have an input from any of the members of the MAC, and so we were, just coming up with those on our own. I think going forward, if anybody has ideas for such things, for agenda items, please bring them forward to the chair.
Yes, that would be wonderful. I want to thank Brian for the wonderful role modeling he has done for me. And the guidance and gentle nudging along the way for us for some things. But thank you very much, Brian, for the work you put in to the MAC, and not just as the MAC representative. And it's not that you're leaving; you're just simply not.
Yes,
the-
not chair anymore.
Yeah, not the chair. And you and I came on within a month of each other, I think, right?
A few months, yeah.
Few months, something like that. Yeah. So, but thank you very much for all the wonderful guidance you have given me and the role model you've done. I appreciate it. All right. Is there
I don't
anything
think we do
else?
a motion for the agenda.
I move to adjourn.
Oh, meeting adjourned.
Wow.
No, you guys are still, it's gonna be hard to beat the first chair for that.
Yeah.
Oh.